Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 7th meeting of the Citizens Police Review Board. I call the meeting to order, and let's see, we do have a quorum. Yes, we do have a quorum. I don't see Ms. McClellan. Okay, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're good. All right, this evening, I would like to welcome two new members of the board, Ms. Lakeisha Brown and Mr. Raymond Robinson. And I'm going to ask that each of them just say a few words about yourselves and let us hear who you are. So Ms. Brown, you can go first.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to serve my community, something I've dedicated majority of my life to do. Thank you so much for this platform, and I'm happy to be here and can't wait to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Also glad to be here. Looking forward to serving on this board and giving back to the community in this way. Lifelong city resident. Grew up on the south side, living on the north side, work on the east side. Followed the happenings of the board for some time and really honored to be a part of it and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The other member of the board that's here at this moment is Mr. Williams and myself. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully we'll have some of the other members to join us because they generally do attend the meeting. So hopefully they will be here. We have the minutes of the October 26th meeting. Hopefully you got a chance to read those. Are there any corrections or additions? If there are none, the minutes will stand approved as submitted according to the new Roberts Rules of Order. I don't have any opening remarks or a report tonight. We have some things that we're carrying over from our last meeting, and we will hear more about that under the Executive Director's report. But we will follow the agenda tonight with the business of the board, the case reviews, and we will also have public comments at the end. So Ms. Pittenger, we're already down to your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome everybody. It really is, it's awesome to have both Mr. Robinson and Ms. Brown joining us. It's looking forward to having a good couple of years, a lot of work to do. I'm sure your contributions will be complimentary to your colleagues here, and it's always an open invitation to you to contact us if you have any questions about any case or anything that may be going on. We try to keep people up to date on controversial issues as they happen. They don't tend to stay to our calendar of meetings, so we do try to keep people up to date when something does happen in between. I want to acknowledge that last Wednesday, when Ms. Brown and Mr. Robinson were sworn in, the council president, Ms. Teresa Kill Smith, officiated, and that was very nice. It was nice to have a council person swear you in because they represent the people, and that's who you're here to advocate for, to protect, and to promote a positive relationship between the community and the police. So that was unusual, but it was certainly a wonderful opportunity to share some of our pride in the work that the board does with the president of City Council. Our intake thus far this year, it looks like we're going to end up pretty much in the same ballpark as we have the last couple of years, with a total as of this morning of 221 complaints. Among them are 4 executive director complaints, 10 general service complaints, and 13 that were administratively closed, meaning that the time it was exceeded to file a complaint when the individual came to us, or they may have been out of our jurisdiction, meaning that they're not within the city of Pittsburgh, involving city of Pittsburgh police officers. And in those cases, Ms. Gamble, our intake director, does help those folks get hooked up with their local jurisdiction if it's a complaint that they can take to either the local chief of police, the local city manager, city council, or mayor's office, whatever the local jurisdiction is, however they're structured. She has done a great job linking people to local resources when that would be more appropriate and when we can't help them. And that also applies to other support services, and support services within the city have been expanding. So there are more opportunities for us to help and redirect people to sources of support. So Michelle has developed that very well and has become her own little referral service. There has been no public update on the death of Mr. Jim Rogers. You'll recall he was a gentleman who had an encounter with police where a taser was deployed apparently several times. By the time he was taken to the hospital for medical clearance, he was found unresponsive. He was admitted and ultimately he died the following morning. So we're all waiting with bated breath as to what the medical examiner's determination on cause and manner of death is or was, and the district attorney's assessment as to whether or not there is some criminal culpability to attach to the officers that were involved in that incident. It is an unusually long period of time since that happened, and that there has been no public disclosure as to the disposition of that case. We are, by city law, required to step back. We have to stand down until such time as a criminal inquiry has been disposed of. So if there are charges brought against a police officer, we wait until that is either adjudicated or for some other reason it disappears and the officer comes back to work. Or if there is a determination there is no criminal culpability and it's closed at the district attorney's level, then we can resume our investigations. The same does not apply if there is a civil lawsuit involved, however. If there's somebody sued, they're sued, it doesn't stop us. But if an officer is charged with a crime related to a citizen police encounter, we must hold up until that's been resolved. There are some interesting things going on at the state level. You know that I've been involved with the Pennsylvania State Law Enforcement Citizen Advisory Commission, and that commission is unique in the country. But they're meeting on Friday this week. The discussion will be around the use of force and the need for independent prosecutors and independent investigations when there is a critical incident involving a police officer. We've had that debate here in Pittsburgh on several occasions, but now this is elevating that discussion to a higher level, and that commission will be meeting on Friday. If you're interested in it, you can find the link. I'm going to give you a long acronym: PSLECAC. And everything is right there on their page, the links to their meetings and the reports and everything else. But last week there was discussion about independent investigations and independent prosecutors. Mr. Tim Stevens did come, and he gave some comments to that commission review committee. And it is something that you will recall we referred to as a Due Process Act, the Due Process Project, that we worked with community partners on to develop a proposal for the legislature related to independent or special prosecutors in the cases of death or serious bodily injury to someone as a result of a police action. So we'll see where it goes. It's not unique to Pittsburgh that's oftentimes interpreted as a conflict of interest because of the codependency between police officers and district attorneys. It's similarly been controversial and of high interest in Philadelphia, and the counties in between, but certainly with the major urban areas. So hopefully at least some attention can be drawn back to that issue, and we might be able to see some changes in the state legislature. They refused to pass a legislation a couple of years ago that would have required a special prosecutor. So this one maybe will renew the interest in that. I don't really, budget is not completed yet from City Council. As you know, the mayor's proposal is being vetted. The council's budget hearings are underway. I think they probably end up the end of this week. They should be complete with all of those hearings. And then it'll be up to them to decide how they wish to allocate the public money and adopt the operating and the capital budget for 2022 for the city. It's just, that's not been completed yet. Madam Chair, the matters that you spoke of under your unfinished business agenda, I'm thinking maybe it would be more informative if we just, when you get to that, we can offer what we know about it. So you will have it in a timely fashion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer. Mr. Green, it's good to see you, sir.
So are there any questions for Ms. Pittinger? If not, we will move to unfinished business. Okay. You received the 2022 calendar in your packet. If there are any questions you have about the dates, you can let us know. We would also like to take comments from our audience regarding the calendar, if they have any comments as well. Nothing, Stephanie? Okay. All right. May I have a motion to accept the calendar of meeting dates for 2022?
I'll make the motion.
It's been moved. Second, Mr. Green seconded. All in favor? Are there any questions? And there were none. So all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Okay, we received a short briefing on the taser situation during the last meeting. Ms. Pittinger, do you want to bring us up to date on anything?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. The board issued back in 2004 and 2005 briefings related to the use of taser and its efficacy as a less lethal weapon alternative to other levels of force. At that time, it was just coming onto the scene for domestic law enforcement. And it certainly, it promised the potential for giving officers a tool of greater control when they're not getting compliance from an individual without causing extreme injury or death to the person that was being non-compliant. At that time, we looked at about 125 cases where death was associated with the deployment of a taser. And most of those cases had some other condition present, either a drug-related delirium or something that a coexisting heart condition or coexisting medical condition that was incompatible with the use of a taser, things of that nature. Most of them were in the community, but there were a number that were also in corrections facilities. So some were not really controlled, but less apt to have other influences when the taser was deployed. It was also learned that you really shouldn't use a taser when there's combustible material around, such as pepper spray, so that there were changes to the use of OC spray. But it continued to look like it was preferable to some of the other force options that were available to law enforcement. So the board pretty much agreed and indicated that you supported the use of tasers. Now, as we move along, and that's quite some time ago, technology has advanced. The nature of taser is somewhat different. Accountability measures with the taser are different and more accountable. But we're seeing some lethal outcomes that that are surprising and inexplicable in some cases, and yet in the matrix of force, and you're probably familiar with the idea of the continuum of force, where an officer could always be one step ahead of where the non-compliant individual is. That's been moved to contemporary thinking to be more of recognizing that these situations are fluent. They move. One thing doesn't fit all circumstances. So an officer now is thinking in terms of a matrix. I have all these tools available to me. And if the person does this, then maybe I could use that. And if it's this, so that they're better prepared to be reactive to circumstances in the more appropriate manner, rather than just, oh, I've already moved up to here, I've got to use this. And then I've got to go here and here and here, ultimately to deadly force. So taser had been on a higher level, like right below deadly force on most of the force continuums or charts or the level of escalation. It has found its way down to around a level 3 to be in with impact weapons, hard force. Probably Mr. Williams would be able to describe this much better than I, but it was moved down rather than up. And the question before policymakers now and people as yourselves is, should it stay at that lower level, or should it be moved back up to a higher level of force as an instrument of force? The potential for lethal outcomes seems to have increased, or at least the frequency and the incidence of deaths pursuant to the use of a taser or taser exposure seems to have increased. That's not something that we expected to see, but we do see it. And the reason it's out here now is because of what happened to Mr. Rogers. So looking back, and do we want to review for or revise for reissue a statement on the value and recommendations on the level of force that taser should be placed? The Bureau of Pittsburgh Police did move it down to a level 3, an intermediary kind of force, from its higher level. And last month, I believe we looked at some charts that demonstrated the frequency with which it was being used, which is also increased, which is not unlike what we saw with pepper spray, when pepper spray was the big thing that was going to, solve all the problems. But the question to you tonight is, do you want to direct us to revise for reissue, or to give to you to consider a statement on the efficacy of taser continuing to be a level 3 or an intermediary level of force, or should it be higher? Do you want us to do that revision, look at the research, update what you did many years ago? It's your statement, it's your policy endorsement. And if you want us to renew it, we'll be happy to do that.
So why don't we have some opinions from the board regarding that? Mr. Green?
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. The first thing that I would look for before even making a determination would be to take a look at the statement of policy or position that we already have out there, so that we can review it to determine whether or not it should be updated. Do we have that available to us?
Yes, was it included in the minute distribution, Stephanie?
What are you asking, Mr. Elwin? What are you looking for? I missed
The
the first part.
2004 and 2005 TASER briefings from the board.
Yes, I think there's a link that you can click on that says here for and you can see it. If not, I can get it to you, Mr. Green.
My apologies, I missed the link. Okay.
Oh, you're fine. It just says here in parentheses, so you might not even realize it's a link.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Mr. Green, I think what we're offering or asking if you want us to reassess that policy briefing in a contemporary context, since it's been so long.
Well, given both the passage of time and the apparent change in circumstances in so far as the frequency of deaths, I would vote for yes, a reassessment, or at least the opportunity to reassess our position on that.
Okay, Mr. Robinson and then Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm not sure if you addressed this, Ms. Bittinger, but the statement that the board had put out back in 04 or 05, did you say that the city has since lowered the tier for the use of force? So I think if that's the case, then yes, I would think that with them making that change after whatever recommendations or assertions we had made, or this board had made, I think that would also warrant us revisiting that.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, in our last meeting, I verbalized some objection as to the reason we were looking at reevaluating, and it was in the terms of classifying it as a weapon, or in the mindset of that versus the tool to be used. And I gave some conversation about that, gave some input about that. And where I am stating that I'm opposed about the reevaluation of the statement is because of the why. I don't dispute that there are more incidents where we are getting, there are deaths that result from the use of TASER, or more injuries from the use of TASER. But I think that needs to be parsed out, because when officers utilize the TASER tool, it's actually, and it means it's not just to stop threats, it's actually a means of gaining control, for which officers are obligated to do. There's three aspects or three buckets that you can look at for officers' presence on the scene. It's either to gain, regain, or maintain control. And so whenever these situations happen, they're trying to gain, whether they're getting control of the situation, control of the subject, or sometimes that TASER can filter over to minimizing a threat. But the matrix to be thinking through that isn't because there's this threat. So when somebody would do this use of this tool, because we start applying, if they present this, then you can come and use this. And that's kind of where Beth was talking about more of the, not the continuum, more of a matrix. So my input that I would say is, one, it's a means of control. There are some incidents that happen that don't result out of just the simple use of the TASER that caused the death. It could be somebody's fall and they hit their head. It could be, other contributing factors why the taser was used that caused the death. I will say that, as I said before, if there is some information that shows where the deployment of the taser seems to be disproportionate when it's used in certain situations, that's more of addressing the issue, but not the changes to the tool itself. I think we handcuff our police officers when we're going to try to use or specify when the use of that, when it actually has been more of a life-saving and injury-saving tool than it has been an injurious tool. And that's across the board over the use, all across anybody that uses taser. So it is an intermediary tool, but I'll say from personal use and personal experience, going from use of blackjacks and nightsticks and ASPs, expanded batons and the like, where those are intermediary type of tools, we expected them to cause injury whenever their impact weapons are used or whatever. We expect injury, and if there are targeted points for using those tools, the taser actually minimized a lot of that. So I just want to be careful with, I know what happened here. It's tragic. There's probably something in the reason why the use of this one was and the death that resulted. But I want to caution against a knee-jerk reaction. And I'm not saying that to say that we're not doing responsible. That's not what I'm saying. I want to be with it. If we're going to go with a decision, let's have full information about what it is and not some of that data, because I'm just concerned about moving that based off of the reasons why we're going to that.
There are other comments? My sense is that if the taser has been lowered, if we could just understand the data that was used to make that change, so that we can understand why the law enforcement felt that it could be a lower level than it had been previously. So just collecting the data that went into that decision will better inform us. And of course, we can look at that compared to what we have, not necessarily to say that we're definitely going to change, but we're going to research why there was a change and see how that impacts the statement that we already have.
Might I add too, for the board's awareness, and I'm not questioning your knowledge on it, but just so you're aware, there are two types of deployment with the taser. One is by the prongs whenever it is whenever it's deployed, and there's a range that's there. I think it might be 21 feet of range, and that's usually that plays right in part about officer safety issues. I think it's 21 feet, but also there's something called a drive stun, and so somebody can be in close contact and they can take the taser without the prongs on there and just give a momentary contact to try to get compliance. So it's not even just, and if an officer was using a drive stun method and we saw in their tactics that they took that taser and they were just driving it into the person and they were just constantly pulling that trigger, that would be improper deployment of that tool, and they would be subject to whatever the ramifications are for the improper use of that tool. But just know that there are two deployments. They can fire the prongs, but also in those close contact situations, and somebody's fighting the officer, or maybe they're trying to escape, or whatever the reasons might be, they can pull that taser off to get compliance and give a momentary pause on that. And that's what it's used for. It's about gaining control. So in the tool itself, you talk about lowering it, I have my opinion, and this might be opinion more than fact. It was a new tool, and we really didn't know what was what. But as more information came out to see how the tool could be utilized, that may have given some reason to say it doesn't need to be at that level because of how it could be deployed and the methods it would be deployed could be a reason. But that's opinion, not fact, and I just wanted to share.
Okay. But even if it's in the close contact, isn't the same amount of voltage used?
It's 50,000 volts, but the volts don't kill you. It's the amperage. And I'm speaking from personal experience of being tased a whole lot of times because I did training with tasers, I'm saying, but we also train with it. And I'm still here talking with you now. So I've had them deployed in me. I've had drive stun through my whole tactical years. And so we've had a lot of experience of experiencing it ourselves.
But But there are probably mediating circumstances for each individual too, with the response to that, I would think. And again, I'm out of my field completely, but I would just think that would make a difference. Other opinions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could I just add to or make sure I understand where Mr. Williams wants us to go with this? I think you had mentioned, and you were very clear last month about the disproportionate use of taser. You know, were certain communities being exposed more than others, et cetera, the disparate treatment issue and the context. And I would propose that, yes, we would certainly include that information, that data, the best that we could. I would not, well, there's another thing here that's going on, and I think it is the notion, the conceptual idea of use of force and how to interact and gain that control when you're in a situation where you have non-compliance. And I think that's why they're trying to make people think differently about it, so that the matrix becomes available, so that you can have the back and forth, the up and down, use what you need. The least restrictive and the most appropriate intervention is always available to the officer. We're getting a little bit too concrete with the traditional continuum of force, because once they started going up that ladder, up that continuum, some officers weren't willing to come back down, even if that was the most appropriate way to try to gain control. So this is trying to get folks to think differently about, and perhaps more realistically, about the situations that are encountered, that the officers have to try to de-escalate and intervene and gain the control when there's a non-compliant situation. So that's a whole other aspect to this that I think would be worth including here for your consideration, related to the research and the developments that have come out of a lot of the think tanks and the president's 21st century policing reports, just trying to change the way people think, how officers are trained to think, so that they know they have that flexibility, that it is not a rigid commitment to a particular level of force, and as you're moving up that you have to stay up here. You can come back down here, that's okay. But you have to be able to move and swing and back and forth as the situation requires. So we would propose to include that information as well.
We also have to look at, folks with mental illness and being able to decipher mental health issues versus non-compliance because we choose to. So, I know we looked at that through the Department of Human Services, Behavioral Health a few years back, but maybe it's a good time to look at the policy and, kind of keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, to reiterate some of the earlier points, and I think Mr. Williams made a good point. I do recall, I think at the onset of the taser use, one of the concerns I remember hearing was that it would become, some officers might over-rely on it. And I think that was the point that I heard Ms. Benninger saying, was that we still have this whole continuum of tools and tactics, and the fear I know was years ago was, would we just over rely on that simple one, or not simple one, but on that one tool. And so again, that's where my questions would be, was when they lowered the tier, they're expanding the opportunities in the different areas where that taser could be used. And I think I heard a couple of folks say here, was there data that supported that? Like, why did we think we should be able to use this device, this tool, in more situations than had previously been used? And again, I think that goes back to the issue is, yeah, we have other tools at the lower end of the continuum. Are we still seeing those other tools used? So do we have data on the alternatives, whether it's verbal de-escalation and the other mechanisms that are available at that lower level of the matrix? Did we see those numbers decrease with an increase in taser or not? And so I think just looking at data, again, being new to this, I'm not sure of the data that you've had already or what you're able to get, but that's where I would like to see is someone in that area. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're at a point where we will recommend or not recommend the review of the taser policy that we have in place currently. So just to move it forward, may I get a motion to that we review the current taser policy from the perspective of just looking at the data that was used with the tiering of the taser, and also with any other changes that have taken place because of the use of the taser.
Madam Chair, did you want to ask for public comment on that?
Oh, we should. You're correct, we should. Are any hands up, Ms. Hampton? No hands up?
Mr. Ostrowski was up, but then he put it down, so I'm not sure if he wants to chime in or not. I'll wait to see for a second or two.
Okay.
I want to add a comment, Beth, in your research when we're talking about, there might be a pairing that might be necessary. I don't know if it comes right in line or not, but there was a study done and I forget the year. I just wonder if it corresponds with this change as well, that demonstrated that the use of force by officers was less than what would have been indicated. There was a study done that says that where use of force could have been indicated in these situations, it wasn't used. And so I just remember, and I'm just going off of memory, I don't have it in front of me, that information coming out wasn't that somebody should run out and do more use of force. It was saying officers weren't using force even when situations deemed it appropriate. Yeah. And I wonder if some of the changes were coming about to expand the capability of decision-making, and it may not align that way, but I'm just kind of curious that if that, and that was a Pittsburgh study, if I'm not mistaken, use of force in the city of Pittsburgh.
It was jeopardizing officer safety, as I recall.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we asking questions or no? Are we done with that period?
We have discussion and we're asking for input from the public if they would like
Okay.
to.
There's one. Mr. Ostrowski would like to speak.
Okay. Ms. Ostrowski?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Looks like it. Okay, it was specifically regarding Dr. Mary Jo's comment, because I feel that, the taser, along with use of force in general, as a parent of, an autistic preteen now, who only in the past, few years has began to verbally communicate, the statistics I see, of children, and teenagers just a few years older than him, being killed by police officers due to a lack of training because they're being, misunderstood as being under the influence or, whatever, when in fact, it's a genuine medical disorder. And that's a fear I have every day, especially with my recent experience with the Pittsburgh police, is, that I won't be there, one day, or his mother won't be there, and he has an interaction with the police and, things escalate. So I definitely think, the correlation with, mental illnesses is something that should receive, utmost attention. And that's all.
Okay. So again, to move this, is a board member willing to make a motion? And we can go forward from there. Mr.
I will
Robinson?
make that motion. I will make that motion.
Okay. And basically it is to review the statement we currently have with information regarding the lowering of the tier for the taser, and to include research that's evidence-based regarding the use of the taser and police behavior. Is that pretty much it, board? Okay, may I have a second?
I'll
Mr.
second.
Green, second. Oh, okay. Mr.
Sorry.
Green beat you to it, Mr. Williams. Okay, it has been moved and seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. We also received an update on the dentist group project last month. And Ms. Pittenger, could you give us an update on that?
Sure. I would actually like to defer to Ms. Hampton, because she and Investigator Elwood have been meeting with dentists bi-weekly for the last many, many months, if that's okay.
That's
Stephanie?
fine.
Yes, Dr. Dabry, how are you this evening? Yes, we met with the dentist group on Wednesday last week, and I have asked them to move forward with the reporting process because we have not gained any cooperation from the Bureau at all. While that conversation was happening, I guess Lieutenant reached back to them. That's part of the training academy. He's the head of the training academy here, and they were supposed to have a discussion, and he will disseminate the information to us this week, which will be tomorrow. Otherwise, they are going to move forward with the report, and we will present it to Ms. Pittenger and then to the board.
Okay.
So what we will do is we'll receive that report and incorporate it into our report back to you, so the board can decide whether you want to adopt it, if you want to add to it, and we could wrap this thing up. The unfortunate part of this that was a delaying factor was the lack of full and open cooperation that we received from the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. Orders were issued for them to participate and cooperate with the dentist investigators in the inquiries that dentist was making. And, after 6 weeks of people not being available, being off, being sick, being whatever, it became pretty obvious to us that this was a reluctance to cooperate. So it just dwindled to where the information from the academy would be helpful. They did indicate, as Stephanie reported, that they were having that consultation. And tomorrow we'll have a better sense of how much time will be left until that report draft is available to give to you, or to give back to us. And then we will return to you a completed report.
And just to piggyback off of what Ms. Pittenger has said, they also stopped cooperating, period. Others that were involved they were named in a lawsuit, just they will not cooperate at all. And we have not heard back from the chief. We have not heard back from the director, assistant chiefs. No one is cooperating now, aside from the ones that were on vacation and this, that, and the third.
Yeah, the ones that were named in the lawsuit, that was addressed to the command. And we were willing to compromise on, all right, we understand that, give us the rest of the folks. And command agreed to give us access to those folks. And those folks were told to cooperate, but then they didn't. So, enough is enough, I guess. And we're just feeling that to give you something that's substantive and worthwhile, you will get that. But it's going to be it's not going to be as complete as we had hoped it would be. And that's because of the failure of the Bureau to cooperate fully.
Well, my
And all of that
concern is for
happened
the
prior
time.
to,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, all of that happened prior to last year's referendum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Mhm. Right, right. The
Yeah.
time factor here is over a year.
Yeah.
And-
Since we've been trying to get this done.
And just to give the new appointees some background information on this project, this was a project that the mayor asked Beth to do asked our team to do a assessment. And we went to them and tried to get a waiver of competitive bid for this project. And they said, no, council denied us. So we had to go through the RFP process, which took 6 to 8 months to get approved. So it was also held up in council, which is bringing us to where we are now, a year and a half later.
yeah, it was 9 months. It was 9 months. We opened the inquiry the day after it was on June 2nd, I believe we opened the inquiry. And on June 9th, we went to council all ready to roll. And yeah, it just turned into an adventure in obstruction for us. And it took 9 months to get it signed, sealed, and delivered. And so we were already almost a year out before we could even get it fully underway. And that's not through no fault of board staff or the board, city administration that caused the delay.
Well, I want to thank the board investigators and staff for being diligent and trying to move this forward as best they could, even though we don't have the information that would make it a solid report or give as much detail about what actually happened as we had hoped for. So thank you for the work that you're putting in. Mr. Green?
Yes, a question. When you say that orders were issued for officers to cooperate, can we say specifically like who issued that order? And was there ever any statement about officers being subject to any consequences for not cooperating?
No, the chief and the director of public safety directed an assistant chief to direct those officers to cooperate. The assistant chief was on vacation for a few weeks. Then the directive went out from the assistant chief to all the officers. The respondents in the civil lawsuit did come back and told us we don't want to do this. We're concerned about our exposure and blah, 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 which we respected and we understood. The others, so then it came down to the lower echelon of the officers that were potentially witnesses. And then it just fell apart. Nobody would get back to our staff. Calls weren't returned, emails weren't returned. It was just pretty evident that they were not going to cooperate. But I have to also say, on the other side of the coin, we didn't have any great cooperation from the community either. We had some folks who were willing to talk to us, but some reluctantly turned over evidence, but I wasn't, right there with every conversation. I mean, Stephanie, am I exaggerating that? I mean, to my knowledge, we did not have but maybe one or two.
No, she's not exaggerating. The community did not, I mean, everybody came forward in the beginning, and I have to think, and Dave, you can chime in anytime. I have to think that because the process took as long as it did to get moving, that they felt as though we weren't doing anything. That's just my opinion. Dave, did you speak to any of that?
The way that it really panned out with me being able to gather evidence and speak to individuals was that we received a moderate amount of video footage and also statements from individuals in the community. And as soon as the lawsuit was filed, everyone stopped. I did not receive calls back from individuals who were very warm in speaking with me at first, unfortunately. And there may have been a group that was actively speaking with the public as well in the opposite direction of the way that we were going, but we were never actually able to pin that down. That's really just a part of the investigation that we couldn't get a hold of. So no, there wasn't cooperation from the public after the lawsuit was filed.
Well, I'm sure all of that will be documented in the report that they gathered as much as they could without the cooperation of the law enforcement and the public to get additional data. Okay. Are there any comments from the public on this, Ms. Hampton? Any hands up? None? Okay. Ms. Pittenger, any other comments?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. All right, we will move on to the case reviews. And Mr. Robinson and Ms. Brown, if you have questions about any case, you can let me know. If there are no questions, we generally take them as a whole. Okay.
Madam Chair, would you like the agenda on screen?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, can you see the
Okay.
agenda?
Yeah, well, we see the individual cases, not the agenda. Can you open up the agenda?
I'll try. That's what I have on my screen.
Okay. Now we're getting some feedback. Okay. So we'll move forward while Ms. Pittenger is trying to pull that up. At this time, we have no public hearings scheduled. We do have 4 full investigations. They are case 16821, 16521, 11121, and 10721. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have 4 investigations. Are there any questions about the investigations? Okay. If not, may I have a motion to accept the 4 for full investigation?
Also move.
Okay, it has been moved. Second?
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. Any questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. We have 9 cases for a 30-day extension for the full investigation. And they are 16221, 16021, 15521, 14821, 13821, 12621, 12121, 09921, and 08421. May I have a motion to authorize a 30-day extension for those 9 cases?
So moved.
It has been moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. There are no unsustainable cases tonight. We do have 3 unfounded to dismiss as unfounded. They are cases 13221, 3921, and 1821. May I please have a motion?
I'll move.
It has been moved. May I have a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. There are no others, but we do have 2 suspensions tonight. They are case 10421 and 6321. They are suspended until January of 2022. May I have a motion for those 2 suspensions?
I'll make the motion.
It has been moved. May I have a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. We also have the continued suspension cases, just so we can keep up with the status of cases. I thank Ms. Pittiger and her staff for including those. And as you see, we have 18 of those cases. All right, those are the case reviews for tonight. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, January 25th, and it will be via Zoom. Ms. Hampton, are there any public comments tonight?
No one has their hand up and I don't see a chat.
Okay.
The Ozarks did place a chat.
Welcome. Oh, yes. Oh, they said welcome and thank you to Miss Brown and Mr. Robinson, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you, the Ozarks.
Those are the Ozarks. They're on date night with us every month. We love the Ozarks.
We do love them. We
Yes.
love them. Thank them for being with us
Yes.
too.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Ozark. You as well. Happy holidays.
Okay.
Just
Ms.
for
McClellan, thank
clarification-
you for joining us. We're happy to see you tonight.
Just clarification on the
okay.
25th. There's still a pre-hearing, right? That has been determined?
Yes. The
I'm sorry, I was
pre-hearing
late.
is January, correct?
Okay.
Right.
Sorry about that. I was a few minutes late and
Okay.
maybe you guys talked about that.
No,
see another hand up.
It was scheduled for the committee, so we all received the email for that.
I'm gonna allow her to talk. It's Alex Sonia. Sorry, I'm not sure, but I'll allow them
Alex
to talk.
Soria?
Yes.
Okay. Alex, do you want to say something now?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I am one of the gentlemen who filed an investigative report. Miss Tiffany Hunt reached out to me today and said that I had the opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting, and I figured this would be the time to speak. I was the gentleman who had filed a report against the officer at Fox's Pizza. I just wanted to comment that Officer John Senkic of the Zone 6 Police Department was very assumptuous in his investigation into my complaint. He treated me with very little respect. The man swore at me. He did not listen, and he just didn't conduct himself like a police officer should. At times when I asked him if I could, say something or this and that, he began to become combative and continued to swear at me. And me and him talked on the phone for 18 and a half minutes. It's well documented. I have the Verizon call sheets, and he failed to put this in his police report. And I just wanted to let everyone know that this is unbecoming of an officer. I do know many Pittsburgh police officers, and they've never acted like this. I have family that works in DC with the Secret Service, FBI, and I've never seen anyone act like this. And I'm appreciative that there's such an organization like this exists. And I do hope we could find a reasonable solution. And I thank you for giving me the time to speak to you today.
Thank you. We do have that, and we voted on it tonight, so it will move forward based on our vote.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. McClellan? Oh, you're waving.
Yeah, it was like goodbye.
Okay.
Yeah, I was responding to him signing off, and
Okay.
that's all. Sorry.
Well, everyone have a safe and peaceful holiday season, and we'll look forward to seeing you in January. So take care of yourselves and be safe.
Can we do an adjournment?
Yes.
Can Can we do an
Oh,
adjournment?
yes, we do need to adjourn, don't we? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Okay, Mr. Green and Miss Gershio, Dr. Gershio, also raised her hand. It has
All
been-
right, happy holidays.
Yes, and everybody in agreement, yay, or raise your hand or whatever.
Aye.
Okay, I don't think any
Aye.
of us are gonna say no.